When I was younger, I competed in powerlifting and my training was centered around lifting as much weight as possible. In my early 30s, I hit a 300-pound bench press at just 145 pounds, which was over double my body weight. But as I got older, that powerlifting style of training started to feel stale, and so did my muscle gains. It wasn't until I started jiujitsu that I realized despite looking fit, my age was catching up. The added physical demands forced me to rethink my training and prioritize fatigue management. That shift gradually evolved into more hypertrophy-focused workouts, and as my goals changed, so did the exercises I relied on. A lot of the lifts that had been staples for years were no longer serving me, and once I let them go, that's when the muscle gains came back stronger than ever. In this video, I'm going to share 5 exercises I stopped doing after 40 that allowed me to look better in my 40s than I did in my 20s and 30s. And make sure you watch till the end because I'm going to share one exercise you're probably doing right now that's doing absolutely nothing for muscle growth and in fact could be setting you up for nerve damage, spinal issues, and chronic neck pain. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Exercise number 1, flat barbell bench press. There was a period of time where the barbell bench press was causing a bit of pain in my elbow. Rather than avoiding horizontal pressing movements altogether, I played around with a few different machine options and found that the converging chest press machine allowed me to load my chest significantly without any pain. This made sense because machines provide a guided movement through a fixed bar path, and this removes the need for secondary muscles to help stabilize the bar. Unlike a free weight press, which requires more stability and technical precision, a chest press machine allows me to press heavier with better control, push closer to failure safely, and keep the tension exactly where I want it. Simply put, using a machine makes every rep feel more connected to the muscle I'm trying to grow. But not all machines are created equal. The converging movement allows for more horizontal adduction, which is the primary function of the chest. This is unlike using a barbell, which locks you in a fixed bar path and thus limits the range of motion. With the converging chest press, I'm not just pressing the weight up, I'm opening up my chest for a deep stretch at the bottom, then driving my arms inward for a hard squeeze at the top, all while keeping significant tension on my pecs through a more complete range of motion. In fact, studies show that machine presses, especially ones that allow the hands to converge, lead to higher pec activation than flat barbell presses. And while dumbbells could probably serve a similar purpose, the need to stabilize the weight is still there. Now, this isn't inherently bad, but if my goal is to grow my chest, then this requires me to push close to failure, something I'm far more comfortable doing on a machine. This may not have made a big difference when I was dumbbell pressing 50s and 60s, but by this point I was working with the hundreds for sets of 10 to 12. So the machine allows me to use a weight heavy enough to stimulate growth while not having to find a spotter or worry that some other muscle might give out while I'm pushing close to failure. Now, while I still do barbell and dumbbell press on occasion, as I do believe these are still great exercises, the machine press has simply become the focal point of my chest training. Exercise number 2, barbell deadlift. There's no better feeling than slapping 4 or 5 plates on each side of the bar and pulling it off the ground from a dead stop. But here's the sad reality. Since I'm not powerlifting, I felt like the deadlift was taking more than it was giving. While it wasn't causing pain or discomfort, the stimulus it produced for muscle growth wasn't enough to justify the fatigue it caused. And at this point in my lifting career, my goal is to build muscle as efficiently as possible, and for that to happen, we must manage fatigue. Now, this doesn't mean I've ditched the hip hinge altogether or stopped lifting heavy. Instead, I've opted for other variations that I can load without as much fatigue while still giving the posterior chain enough stimulus. For this, I've started doing trap bar deadlifts. What I love most about the trap bar deadlift is positioning. Because the bar wraps around you, the load stays centered, not out in front of you like the traditional deadlift. This means less forward lean, a more upright torso, and so a lot less shear stress on the lower back. One study from the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that trap bar deadlifts reduce spinal stress while still allowing for high force production. Because your shins don't limit the bar's path, you can adjust your position position to hit the target muscle better. It makes deadlifting more specific to your build and much easier on your joints without having to avoid heavy lifting. Not only that, but the neutral handles give you a more comfortable grip and shoulder position, which means less strain on the biceps and rotator cuffs. This allows for a tighter upper back and better lat engagement, all of which equals a safer and stronger pull. Exercise number 3, bent over rows. Bent over barbell rows were a staple in my training for years, but here's what started happening. Halfway through the set, I wasn't even thinking about my lats or traps anymore. Instead, I was more focused on trying to keep my lower back locked in place. You see, with barbell rows, your lower back and even hip muscles are doing a ton of work just to hold the bent over position. Now, this doesn't make it a bad movement, but it does require a lot from your spinal erectors before your actual target muscles even get a real challenge. What ends up happening is your low back gives out before your lats and traps. This wasn't an issue in the beginning, but as my pulling muscles got stronger, my lower back became the limiting factor. Not only was I unable to achieve enough effective reps, I was causing a lot of unnecessary fatigue. Thus, I've made the shift to chest-supported rows, which allow me to keep the tension on the muscle I'm targeting without having to worry that secondary muscles will be a limiting factor. In fact, studies have shown that when you remove the need for spinal stabilization, you can actually recruit more motor units in the muscles you're targeting. That means a stronger growth stimulus in the lats, rhomboids, rear delts, and traps without the stabilizers tapping out early and cutting your sets short. You see, with the support of the pad, your scapula can move freely, protracting at the bottom and retracting at the top, helping you build muscle and strength through a full range of motion. Not only that, but according to the International Journal of Sports Physical Therapy, training those scapular muscles doesn't just improve movement, it also reduces stress on the front of the shoulders, lowers the risk of rotator cuff issues, and improves overall shoulder control. So not only are you building more muscle, but you're keeping your shoulders strong and healthy for long-term progress. Exercise number 4, walking lunges. I attribute a lot of my best lower body gains to walking lunges, and while they weren't always fun to do, the insane pump made them hard to skip. But over time, I noticed something I couldn't ignore. My knees weren't loving it, and eventually they became more of a joint endurance test than a muscle building lift. Walking lunges are basically a forward lunge in motion. That forward momentum forces you to decelerate your body weight every step, which increases shear forces and stress on the knees. Instead of driving all that force into the muscle, you end up stopping your body with your joints. And like most other lifts, this becomes more pronounced as you get stronger at the exercise. But rather than ditching the lunge altogether, I've replaced them with Bulgarian split squats. First, they hit the same major movement patterns, but with more control, less strain, and more muscle tension per rep, which for me is the sweet spot. I still get the challenge, the balance component, the stretch, and the pump, but without destroying my knees in the process. And sure, you'll be using lighter weights, but studies show that Bulgarian split squats activate your quads and glutes just as much as heavy back squats, even when using lighter loads. In other words, significant tension on the target muscle without added pressure to the spine or other joints. Additionally, since you're using lighter weights, some adjustments in form are easier to manage. This is because with a couple of tweaks, you can bias either the quads or the glutes. If I want to bias the quads, for example, I can stay upright and let the front knee travel forward a bit more. If I want to hit the glutes, I lean slightly forward to increase the hip extension requirement. And best of all, since I'm not wrecking my knees or causing unnecessary fatigue, I can recover faster, which means I can train my legs again sooner. To put it simply, you get all the benefits of the walking lunge without the drawbacks. And exercise number 5, barbell shrugs. Like most lifters, I spent years shrugging heavy weights trying to build bigger traps, and no matter how much weight I slapped on the bar, my traps never seemed to grow. You see, while the upper traps are responsible for scapular elevation, the middle traps play a major role in scapular retraction. So, if you're trying to maximize trap development, a standard vertical shrug might not be enough. Instead, you want a variation that allows for more scapular movement, not just straight up and down. Studies show that movements involving a full range of scapular motion tend to activate the traps and rhomboids more effectively than traditional shrugging alone. Now, while you can lean forward slightly during a barbell shrug to create that range, it can get awkward, especially as the weight increases. That's why I switched over to a high incline shrug. Similar to a chest-supported row, this variation reduces stability demands, allowing you to target your upper traps more effectively without having to support your torso in an unstable position while holding a heavy barbell in front of your body. Your chest is supported by the bench, which locks your torso in place. This not only helps you train the muscle harder and closer to failure, it also eliminates momentum and forces your traps to do all the work. And because you're no longer just moving weight, you finally feel the difference between lifting heavy and training effectively. And if you're still not convinced that these are a better alternative, keep in mind that traditional barbell shrugs, especially as the load becomes heavier, can result in everything from neck pain to nerve damage and even spinal issues. Now remember, I'm not saying that any of the exercises on this list are inherently bad. In fact, most of them are still staples in a lot of my clients' programs. And if they're still working for you, keep doing them. But for me, as I've gotten older and my goals have shifted, these changes were not only helpful, they were necessary. If you're a man over 40 and you feel like your progress has stalled, or perhaps you're not recovering as well as you did in the past, it might not have anything to do with the exercises you're doing. It could, in fact, be your training split that's slowing you down. So before you go making changes to the exercises you're doing, watch my video on the worst workout splits for men over 40. There, you'll learn the worst splits for guys our age, one in particular that you're probably doing right now, and I'll give you a couple of solid options that'll work far better. So click the link on the screen and give that a watch, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.